Hey, I'm Steven, and I make fonts as Arrow type. Right now, I'm in the final stretch, really, of Name Sans, a font I've been working on for like 3 or 4 years plus at this point. Um, I've very much settled on the design of it and the like design stylistic range, the design space, as we call it in the font world. And I'm just kind of like working through tasks of final things I want to be in shape before I call it a version 1. It's been selling through Future Fonts for a couple years now as like kind of pre-release versions 0.1, 0.2, etc. Yeah, so this is a little different than videos I've been making recently. I'm just gonna I won't try to show a long work stream so much as explain a few concepts that I've been finding useful in RoboFont, where I'm working on this font, and I don't know, in this kind of stage of the process where I have to work through a lot of sources, um, and yeah, do things that are sort of repetitive, but not necessarily always totally scriptable. So yeah, I'll just kind of touch on a few things in a bit of a random order. And if you use a RoboFont, this might be useful to you or interesting. If you don't use RoboFont, maybe watch and you'll have a little bit of insight into what working in RoboFont is like. Before you comment below on how much easier you think this might be in Glyphs app, sure, a lot of things are easier in Glyphs app. I still like RoboFont in various ways, and I kind of like the nature of working on a project like this. I also like the nature of working on projects in Glyphs app. Yeah, but this project is mostly a RoboFont thing, and yeah, not trying to convert it. So there's that. If you do have tips on how I might be able to do this more effectively in RoboFont, definitely share those in the comments because I am pretty interested in all, like, there's a million things you could learn about any software. So yeah, I'm definitely here for it. Let's see. So this view right here, as we're looking at it, I hadn't actually been using this just particular view until just now. But what you are seeing is that I've opened one source up as like a full font, and then the other 11 sources, the weights for uprights and italics and optical sizes, I've opened them in simple font windows. This is somewhere in the RoboFont Docs, but basically there's this open font, like a simple font window idea. And I didn't write this code. I am pretty sure I got it from the RoboFont Docs. Yeah, maybe I've customized it very slightly here and there. I don't actually know. Like, I think this is something I added. For instance, at some points I've wanted to open a first glyph when I open a font in a simple font window, because otherwise you have to go over here and click it open. But I don't know. That's whatever. The reason to use a simple font window is that RoboFont starts to kind of slow down once you open more than like 4-ish fonts at a time here. Basically because it's trying to not only update the data in the UFOs, but also keep track and update the font window here. And it's all using Python. And I don't really understand the ins and outs, but I do have the experience that when I'm working on a lot of sources at once, these simple font windows can be very useful. However, it's also useful to have the full font window here because you can sort it in various ways. So for instance, this font has 1061 glyphs, but I only want to look at ones that have actually drawn elements in them. Let's see if I can. Okay, so this is a filter I've created. Basically, if there is a contour in the glyph, if the number of contours is greater than 0, then I want it to be in this view. I am going to actually duplicate this. I'll just make a new one, I guess. How did I do it? Let's see. Create. Maybe I have to go to all glyphs, Command F. So I'm going to do this contour is greater than 0, but also one other thing. So I'm going to add another one, and I'm going to say if anchors is greater than 0, can I do that? Yeah, cool. So basically, I want to find all of the drawn glyphs that have anchors. I have added anchors to basically all of the base A through Z glyphs here, including alternates, although not necessarily all alternates, but I can fix that in a script. Yeah, and what I'm doing in this particular stage is just trying to go through the glyphs and make sure that the anchors are aligned in a decent way. They mostly are, but because some of them were just tossed in there with a script so that, an anchor is better than no anchor usually. So at various stages, I've just chucked it into the middle bottom, for instance, or middle top of the glyph. And here I'm kind of refining the alignment a little bit. A lot of the anchors are more specifically placed where I knew that I needed to create an accent in my basic character set. But for instance, the letter R, first of all, I'm going to save this set, sorry. Set name, drawn with anchors. Okay, we'll call that a default set. So I think it'll go over here. Yes, cool. So then we can get it again. Let's see. So an example, for instance, I don't know. Sure. This is an example. The P probably has better examples still, but for instance, the capital letter R, apparently if you're transliterating some Indic script, I think, or Indic language into Latin script, there is a character that is the capital R with a ring above it. But that is a pretty rarely used character, probably for the kind of areas I'm targeting with this font. And so even though this has a few R accents, it doesn't have an R ring above. But if you use the font, you can type that out. So let's go over here. This is Font Goggles, a great app for testing fonts at a basic way on a Mac. And basically, let's try to figure this out. Here we have R, but if I do, what is it, Control Command Space, it'll pull up this. Maybe I've already got this ring, but I'll search for ring. And by the way, you can use this button to go between like kind of big and small. In fact, I am going to go to big because it's going to be easier to find if it's the combining ring above. Yeah. So I think if I double click that, it'll put this here. And then the order is always a little confusing. It's possible I haven't set this up quite right just yet. That is interesting. But yeah, I often forget the precise order. Oh God. All right. I think it's this order because this should be working. Which is interesting that I guess I probably don't have that supported yet. But okay, let's find an R that we don't have. R Macron above. Let's see if that one will work. Combining. Oh, do I have to? Wow. Is it? So this is actually slightly surprising to me. I thought I had this figured out, and maybe I need to put the R. I see. I think it's because this is r.default, not the R with an actual, and my .default alts don't yet have anchors all the time. So yeah, let's find that in fact. Right. Okay, so I do need to fix that. I will write a script for that actually, because placing it by hand would be super annoying. So let me just even write it as a to-do script to copy anchors from base glyphs to .default alts. The reason that the font has default alts in the first place is that it allows various sort of strange features, like an automatic grotesque R at display styles that goes away in regular styles. And in fact, that's interesting. Once you see this feature turned on, it actually subs in the normal R. And actually, let's try this ring above thing again, just to be complete. Yeah, okay, so that then does work. But yeah, still a thing I need to fix. But yeah, so you can see that the non-alt R has the anchors, and the grotesque display R has anchors, and those allow these combining accents to combine with the letter or with the base glyph, even if they're not pre-composed in the font. But yes, I will have to make sure I add that. And it's possible I even have a script already to do that. I should look. Okay, so I have quickly looked through my scripts, and I don't think I've made that script yet. So I think I will actually make it on camera. But I feel like I was in the middle of explaining the broader system first, and I got sidetracked a little bit. So yeah, this is the goal of making sure anchors are in the right place. We can probably find an instance of where we don't yet have something in the right place. So like, let's see if we can find a combining bottom. That's not in the font. So that's a pretty good instance. So like, let's add this. Should that even combine? I don't know. That's better. Okay. So combining comma below. In an ideal world, I would want this to combine to the stem, because that's kind of what I've been told is expected, kind of. That's what you think of as the like bottom center part of this glyph, rather than the just center of the box itself. But I don't think that that is quite there in any of... Okay, it is there in the hairlines, I guess. Only in the text hairline. So that's something I want to go through and fix, for instance. I think that's also kind of the case in like combining comma. Let's see. In the F, probably. That is not yet set up quite right in a lot of these. Yeah, so I'm going through and finding and fixing things like that. And now that I have this, I believe I was on the U. I had already gone through quite a bit of the caps. Another thing I'm doing is, like, I was at an earlier stage a little unsure of where I wanted to put the bottom anchor. The top was always sticking to the cap height, but the bottom has to work a little harder in that certain glyphs you want floating away. So like a combining comma below. But many of the accents are like the sedia or something, where you actually, that is not what I expected. It actually, sits on the letter, and you don't want any sort of a gap, but you don't want it to be too random. And this font gets really light at times, so it's occasionally pretty hard to hit it exactly in the middle if it's attached right at the baseline. So that is all to say, I have by now figured out that whenever the glyphs are thick enough, I do want the bottom to be at exactly 0 and visually in the center. And when the glyphs are not thick enough, as in the hairlines, it has to be more in the middle of the stroke rather than at the baseline. So let's find this. I had already kind of started a script that, in a very basic way, kind of positions, say, the Q bottom according to the O bottom, which I had already fixed. Yeah, so you can do things like this. So rather than talk that through line by line, I'll kind of code this and try to explain it. So for F in all fonts, which that means we're setting up a this is a loop structure in Python. This is a variable we're creating. And then this all fonts thing is a RoboFont class, I think. I sometimes get terminology wrong that says like, hey, all open fonts, I'm going to do something with or assign to a variable in a loop, say, as in this case. So if I just say print F and then Command R to run it, it prints all of the open fonts with their paths. And it says like, hey, here's a font object, an R font object, as it's called in UFO RoboFont land. So rather than just do that, I'll say if U is in f.keys, that means like if U is in this font, print. Rather than that, I'm going to say set up a variable G equals F U, which means in this font, get the glyph with the name of U. And now if we print G, okay, we've got a bunch of U's. And let's see, I want to, maybe I should go to the letter U to have a better visual here. I want to position this bottom just up at the baseline. So let's grab this again. I wish I could say g.anchors bottom, but I don't think I can. Let's find out by calling it. Yeah, so it's saying this doesn't work. But what I can do is I can say for A in g.anchors, if a.name equals bottom, print A. Okay, so now we've got a bunch of anchors and glyphs, and I'm just going to say, and I'm nesting this code a lot, which maybe I should do. Let's see, if hairline, oops, in f.path, I just want to skip the hairlines because let's go to one. As this example shows, sort of, the display is even more striking, but if this anchor is up by the baseline, it risks the like Sadia going above the stroke or like right through it. So that's not what I want. Yeah. So I'm going to say if hairline and pass, I think it's continue. I'll find out in a second, I guess. If we get less printed out here. Cool. So that eliminated about 4 of them, which is how many have hairline, because there's hairline display display hairline italic, text hairline italic. So yeah. And I don't really need this if u is in f.keys because I know it's in all of these. So I guess if I know I don't need it, maybe I should not have it. I often do that because often you'll be looking for glyphs that aren't in all of the fonts you're looking through, potentially. For instance, if I had support sources open with like only a few glyphs to correct contrast at certain parts of the design space, as you can see in a prior video, you would need that to skip over those fonts. So anyway, we're going to grab the position, print anchor position, I think is probably, yep. What if I say that? Maybe I just have to say a.y, anchor.y. I could probably make this make more sense to a viewer if I say that. Cool. And I'm just going to say anchor.y equals 0. And let's see if that works. I don't know the shortcut to dedent in this RoboFont text editor. Okay. And this is telling us, hey, part of this is deprecated, so don't use it in the future. To be honest, I don't entirely understand what that means. Leave it in the comments if you do. But yeah, what this is telling us is that it did change these things. And let's look at one where that would have changed. Yeah, perfect. But we shouldn't rely on this code in the long run because font objects is going to be changing in the future. Yeah, this is probably used by whatever is setting the anchor position, because I saw that the last time I was setting anchor positions in this simple way. So I don't think this message is even something I necessarily have to worry about. It's something that the RoboFont developers, I think, would have to worry about. Okay, so yeah, that was a little instance of where I find scripts to be useful. Yeah. I kind of feel like this like thickens visually a little bit here. So I'm just gonna pop those up a little bit. Yeah, I don't know. Fonts are hard. Okay, so that fixes that. Let's go through these and check. So that didn't change it in the hairline, which is good. But it looks like it did change it in all of these others. And actually, I want this to be in the middle of the stroke in the hairline italic. So that was worth looking. By the way, to go between these glyphs, that should be more over there. I am using edit that next master extension. And like next, previous. It's interesting. You can also do previous without making a new window. I sometimes like making lots of windows. I wonder if next would be faster without making the new window. I might look into that. Something I have done also is that because I am using this a lot to go between glyphs and sources today, I've actually taken the default shortcuts that are in the editor and in this edit that next master thing. So like usually it's a multi-finger shortcut, which means I have to move away from the mouse a lot. And I have set those up in special keys in my custom keyboard here. So this is something I just learned. Well, first of all, I have this cute, interesting keyboard right now, and it's got relatively few keys, but it's kind of a pleasure to use, and it's not as hard as you would think for font design. I don't know. It's a fun challenge a little bit, but also some things are really nice. So for instance, and this isn't going to be about a keyboard really, but you'll notice that in here, this triggers the edit that next master forward, and this does backwards. And then these are the equivalent just to go backwards and forwards between glyphs in the current font. So basically these are in a layer, which that all means, I won't get into this in this video so much, but that all means that with one hand, I can then say go between glyphs and go between sources. And yeah, it's just much easier than having to use two hands all the time. That way I can kind of stay on the mouse. And I know that I am having to do these things like so many times today as I go through these. So it was worth quickly setting up easier shortcuts to hit. I'm just trying to make sure the ogonek is like inside the contours. Okay. I want to be on my text bold because that is the font that I have pulled this filtered view up with. And then when I hit like forward or backwards in keys, I can more easily go between them. And this also shows me that for some reason, if somebody would need a bottom anchor in the uhorn, I want that to match the U. So I'm going to pull up this script that I had written earlier. It's very similar to the one I just wrote, but basically it goes through one glyph into another uhorn. Maybe I can make these a little better. From glyph, I'll say U to glyph U. This just will make it slightly easier to edit. Anchor to copy position of kind of a long variable, but oh well. These will just make it slightly more flexible and easily repeatable. You're welcome to copy this code if you find it useful. I might post it in a GitHub gist and link to it if I remember to do that. We'll see. But yeah, basically, let's run this and see. Okay, that did what we wanted it to do. Cool. Let's also do it for ogonek. I don't know if there's a single thing on Earth that would need a uhorn ogonek, but you know, while we're here, that will do it. And then I want to quickly save all fonts in simple font windows, just so we don't lose any progress. Every once in a while, RoboFont, partially because I am doing lots of scripts and things, but partly because RoboFont is just a bit of an experimental product all the time, it sometimes crashes. So it's important to save your work a lot. Okay, these positions are probably fine. Here's one where I should update the bottom. So let's do that from glyph O to glyph O slash. What? Oops, doesn't have an ogonek. Okay, cool. I could make this a little more user-friendly, sort of, by like prompting the user to like enter these into little pop-up fields. But to be honest, when I'm the only user, this is faster. And when you have a repetitive workflow, it's kind of all about finding ways to make it efficient for you. I do wonder, maybe the bottom, I'm going to do this. Let's see. We still got this guy. Going to comment this out. Basically, I just want the bottom to be always at 0 so that the things combining are more predictable. Earlier, when I had made a script to kind of throw the bottom in, I wanted it to be at the bottom of the glyph bounds, sort of as I explained for like the C Sadia instance or case, but I think at the baseline we'll kind of align accents better. So let's just say like for name, gname, and we know we want it in both B and D, so we'll start with that for now. This will just make a basic list of them. There's others that I'll probably want to add in there, but I'll start with that. Cool. I also want to check that these tops are aligned. So, and this is good. The bottom is there as I want it to be. It seems like maybe I already repositioned the top anchor according to the stem. I am slightly uncertain whether this should be in the stroke or outside it. Like, I don't know. I don't really know the most common accents people might throw into the B glyph or onto the B glyph. I assume it's more things like comma below than Sadia, but we'll just kind of put it into the stroke on our hairlines anyway. Let's see, I'm just trying to get back to text bold. Cool. Oops, wrong button. Okay. That's there. I want to check the top. And I'll probably pretty much leave it at that. But I guess I just wanted to give a little peek into this part of the process to show like that font design is a lot of like going and fussing with details and trying to make sure that everything's in order so that it'll work as well as possible. Not just the part where you draw letters and make them look pretty or space them or kern them. It's also about like how you set up a technical system to work as you want it to. And actually with that in mind, maybe the one more thing I'll do is go and fix the instance of like r.default not having the anchors that are in the base R. So, well, No, you know what? That'll be a slightly complex script because I know I'll want. Okay, so actually, I will include the script I said I wasn't going to include because it was pretty simple. I'm sure I could have done it in some sort of a more clever way or more bulletproof way, but uh, sometimes you just use a script to do something faster and a lot faster than it would take by clicking around to do it. So, yeah, basically, here's a review after building the variable font again. Um, this is the prior version down below, and then the new version is up top. You can see that the r.default is now correctly getting these accents attached. So like down below, it was working for the normal R glyph, but when I went up to a high enough op size, it swaps to r.default to allow that size specific grotesque R and display styles, and it was losing the attachment. But now that I have put anchors on the r.default, it is building with font make to attach as I want it to. And then you can also see that, for instance, the P now looks better with its comma accent below. And yeah, the script I used was quite simple for this. I'll try to talk it through here pretty quickly. Basically, if I pop open like text bold, okay, we'll do text bold italic. I kind of went to this drawn glyphs filter, and then I just kind of picked out the ones that I knew I wanted to make sure had the correct attachments based on, the attachments that their sort of parent or normal style glyphs had. And I did Command Option C to copy just the glyph names with space separation. So I had these here. I set up a variable, glyphs to anchorize, and use this split thing to put this into a list. Then I went through all open fonts, and I had all my fonts open, including support sources, which don't have all glyphs. So I say for glyph name in this list, if that name is not in the font.keys, so if, for instance, r.default is not in a support source, skip it. And then let's see, it gets the glyph object of the glyph name in that font. It also gets the parent glyph object. So it says split this glyph on the period, and then whatever is in front of it is the glyph we want to reference as the parent. These, by the way, you might think that they are just components, but due to the way I'm using support sources, it doesn't quite work to have them as just components. So that's why we have to do this extra bit here. This is a bit of an exception. The r.rect groat is kind of a double alt. So I just kind of wrote a couple of lines here saying, actually, the parent glyph here is just r.rect. I'm sure there's some cleverer way to do this, but I just needed this to work in my system, and I already knew the glyphs in that system. Rather than if I had an arbitrary font, I'd have to be smarter about this. Maybe you could check if glyphs had the exact same contours or same number of points or something. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure how you would do it exactly if you didn't have some idea. The point of using a script like this is it's so much faster to run a script a couple times once if you get it right on the first try, than to like go to R glyph and copy these anchors and then go back to the r.default and paste them for every source. This is so much better. Yeah, so basically, after finding the glyph in the parent, it says I'm going to make a list of anchors in the glyph because we don't want to put double anchors. We don't want to make anything redundant. Otherwise, that would disrupt the compatibility. So it just says, this is called list construction, I think. It's kind of list composition, maybe. It's really handy. It just says, basically, for variable a in glyph.anchors, I want to get the a.name and put that in a list. So that is a nice little quick way to do it. And it doesn't make sense at first, but then once you do it a few times, it makes sense. And then for parent anchor and parent glyph.anchors, so it just says like, hey, look at this parent glyph that we found here and go through its anchors. If that name is not in our list, then append that anchor to our anchorization glyph. And to do that, you just do parent name and then parent position. And to find how to do that, you can go to fontparts.robotools.dev and then go into object reference. And this is basically a bunch of things you can do to actually like go through the data that's in a UFO and then manipulate it in some way or another. And a cool thing about font parts is that you can also do scripts like this outside of RoboFont. Like you could go through a list of files and find all the UFOs and then manipulate them. And I do that sometimes, especially if I want to write something like this and include it in a build pipeline, for instance, or if I'm just really feeling like working in my code editor rather than in the like slightly less nice code editor of RoboFont. But I go back and forth. If I'm like sitting here doing drawing tasks and really wanting to see it visually, I work like this. And there's also a way to like kind of hook up your code editor to kind of work to easily run scripts in RoboFont, but that doesn't work for me for some reason, which I've tried to debug, but it keeps unworking. One key thing that I like to do is use Git to manage a project, and that way, when I do run a script to make a bunch of changes like this, I can very easily see all of the glyphs that changed. So it actually wasn't that many that were missing these. It's like 6, shorter than the list of potential ones that I wanted to check for. Yeah, and it just tells you that it added anchors here. And then I ran my build and I could test it. So let's see, some of the others that got anchors added are like g.default. So, gosh, I don't actually completely remember when g.default even gets added. It's probably, yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's something to do with this. Yeah, I don't know. Literally don't remember, but I'm sure it does occur. I could dig it up in my feature code. Those alts have to be there for various situations because there's quite a bit of stylistic sets and some like size specific ones and a lot of styles. So yeah, that's where I need to make sure it exists. But yeah, I was just really glad to go through and make sure that these little nitty gritty details for anchor attachments were working well. And yeah, they are better than before. And as far as I know, they're complete at this point in the family. So I'll mark that off the list and move on to the next task. I just think it's kind of fun and interesting to sort of set up a certain workflow and work through it. Yeah, I thought that some other people out there might enjoy seeing this kind of stage of the process. It's much, much later than I typically show, or later, I don't know. This particular family is a lot further along than I typically show. But yeah, if you're working on a font or anything creative, I hope it's going great. I hope you have a great day. Leave a comment or like or subscribe if you want to. Thanks a lot and take care.